Well, for at least 250,000 Aussies, consuming food is a minefield, particularly when you're eating out.
Well, growing numbers are suffering from coeliac disease, where they can't eat gluten.
So what causes the condition and how do you know if you have it? Joining us now is Catherine Zeta-Jones' favourite nutritionist, Joanna McMillan-Price.
What about that?
She was watching the other morning. She loved the segment you did for us the other morning.
That's great. That's good.
Now, celiac...
She's watching online this morning too, so it's all happening.
She's that addicted. Celiac disease, we're hearing more and more about it. That's because more Aussies are suffering from it, isn't it?
We are. Well, it's hard to know whether are more Aussies suffering or is it just that it's getting diagnosed more, because some of the symptoms of celiac disease are very easily confused with lots of other conditions. So it's diarrhea, vomiting, pain and distension, gas that you get after eating. You might even have some vomiting. You might end up with vitamin and mineral deficiencies, so you might find out that you're anemic.
Is it indigestion as well and all that, or is it less so?
Well, what happens is when you have, it's a food intolerance essentially, it's an autoimmune disease, but it's the gluten in foods, and all of these foods that we've got here up to this point all contain gluten. So you can see how many foods there are that you can't eat, but it's the gluten, which is one of the proteins in wheat, barley, rye and oats, that then destroys the lining of the intestine. And what that means is you can't absorb your food properly. So some things get up into the bloodstream that shouldn't get up and cause havoc in the body, and other things can't get up, so some of the vitamins and minerals and so on that we need.
There's some of the symptoms you mentioned, but it sort of narrows the field, doesn't it, for them, and how much the celiacs can eat?
That's right, and one of the things is in the past our food sources would have been relatively simple. So if I say to you, okay, you can't have wheat, barley, rye, oats, that seems like a relatively simple thing to do. But now, because we have such a vast array of food products, if you think of how many products there are that simply use flour to thicken the sauce or to use in some way, or baked products, then we have an enormous array of foods that wouldn't have been around so much in the past. And that may be another reason why we're getting more people with symptoms, because they've got more gluten in their diet.
Is it a simple test at the doctors, or do you go to a nutritionist? Where do you go to find out if you are celiac?
Your first stop is your GP, and there is a blood test that you can do that can tell you if you're not celiac, but in order to tell you that you definitely have celiac disease, you then need to see a gastroenterologist who will take a small biopsy of the small intestine, and that's the definitive way, and that will tell you.
We're talking about a lot of people here, 1 in 100 people. What options are open for them in terms of food? And because there is a growing number for a variety of reasons, is it opening up for them in terms of the amount of foods available and the variety of foods available?
Absolutely, yeah. Even in the last 10 years, the numbers of gluten-free products have grown enormously. So more people are following gluten-free diets. And if you look over here, I've just brought some from one section in the supermarket, the vast array of gluten-free products. So you can now get biscuits. We've got anything that's based on rice, as long as it doesn't, you need to be careful to read the Coeliac Society talk about being ingredient aware. You know, often something says it's a rice cake or a rice cereal, and when you read the ingredient, it's actually a combination of rice and wheat.
They should probably label that, shouldn't they?
So you need to label it. Most of these products here are actually, you can see most of them say gluten-free, and that's fantastic, and that makes it very clear for you. But you can get almost anything in a gluten-free variety.
That's eating at home from food you've bought yourself. What about eating out? That must be a nightmare.
Very difficult, and my advice would be, if you're eating at a restaurant, call the restaurant ahead, explain that you're a celiac and you need to have a gluten-free diet, and is that okay? Can the restaurant cope with that?
Same when you're flying
and the
and
feedback
things like
I get from people, that's right, airlines and so on will be very good. They will always be able to supply you with a gluten-free meal. But the feedback I get from people are that restaurants are, on the whole, very good.
What causes it?
It's partly genetic, but it's not totally genetic. So we know that identical twins, they have a high, if one has celiac disease, there's a very high chance of the other one having it. So there's certainly a strong genetic factor there. But we know that there then is some sort of environmental trigger, and that's not known and fully understood. So it's again a combination of genes and environment.
Can it be cured, just quickly?
In a way it's cured, but by following a gluten-free diet for life. So that is the cure, but there's no sort of magic medicine that will cure it. But yeah, you have to follow the gluten-free diet for life.
Okay, there you go, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Go and see your GP is the message if you think you might have it.
Thanks, Joanna. Coming up, the secret to a sensational night's sleep. It's all in the pillow.
Boss, Richard Reid tells us which pop star is writing a diet book. It's all ahead after the news, sport and weather. Stay with us.